Good morning. On the news hour today, too powerful and squeezing out the competition. A damning report on our supermarkets.
Out-of-hours care, even doctors admit that patients are suffering since they stopped working in the evenings and at weekends.
And can we trust the government on immigration after the debacle over jobs figures? That's what we're talking about. Today, it's Wednesday, October the 31st, 2007. Halloween.
Hello, good morning. You're watching the News Hour. It's just gone 6 o'clock. Also this morning, kicking out foreign criminals as a judge refuses to deport a serial offender for fear of infringing his human rights. We speak to one of his victims who says her rights have been taken away.
And 14 years on from his son's murder at the hands of the IRA, Colin Parry will meet the president of Sinn Féin, Gerry Adams, today. He tells us why the meeting is so important.
But first, some weather from Andrea on this Halloween night. Oh, that's not Andrea. Good morning, Andrea. Even she doesn't look that bad in the morning.
Yes, it is. Good morning.
Joking, pet.
Yes, I was out rather late. There's no makeup here. The facilities are terrible. Good morning, I'm in Tully's Farm in West Sussex, just near Crawley this morning, and we're going to show you just what they do to make Halloween extra scary. It's going to be a good place to come tonight. We're also going to be telling you what the weather is going to be like for Halloween tonight. For this moment, let's tell you what it's like for this morning. Very cold, I can tell you, in Sussex. Temperatures are only a few degrees above freezing, about 4 degrees here at the moment. If we take a look at this morning's chart, you can see that generally most parts of central and eastern England waking up to clear skies like we've got here. That does mean chilly temperatures, but it also means a beautiful start to the day. Further west, things looking rather more unsettled. We've got more in the way of cloud. It's quite a similar weather story to what we saw yesterday. Could well see the odd fog patch as well first thing this morning. And nothing will really change this afternoon. We'll see a continuation of the wind and rain across northern and western parts, brighter in the south and east. But I'll give you a full weather rundown and tell you what the weather's in store for tonight in around 20 minutes.
Andrea, thanks very much. Our top story today, Britain's biggest supermarkets are expected to be criticised by the Competition Commission this morning for using the planning laws to dominate local markets. It's also expected to call for an independent ombudsman to monitor the way they deal with suppliers. Cordelia Kretschmar is in Norfolk for us. Cordelia.
Good morning. Yeah, well, what the Competition Commission is going to say today is that nationally it's a pretty healthy picture. After all, food prices have dropped around 7% since the year 2000. Locally, though, they are finding some problems. There's a growing number of towns in Britain that are being dominated by one of the big-name supermarkets. And to stop that happening today, they're expected to call for a shake-up in the planning laws to try and make it easier for supermarkets to open up new stores in towns like this, in towns like Stalham. Stalham's dominated market-wise by a Tesco. Well, I'm here with independent grocer Nigel Dowdney. Nigel, your market's dominated already by one big-name Tesco. How do you feel about the prospect of getting, say, a Sainsbury's, an Asda or a Morrison's down the road too?
I think there's been 2 supermarkets a week opening since 2001. To me, that sounds like the planning law is pretty liberal already at the moment. I see absolutely no reason to open it up even further and make it easier to build even more. For a community such as this, it would be a disaster to have a big Sainsbury's next to Tesco's.
OK, so thanks a lot, Nigel. I think we're going to find this recommendation by the Competition Commission pretty controversial. It's going to say it's going to be better for consumers in terms of price and choice, but for people like Nigel, it's clearly bad news.
Cordelia, thank you.
Let's catch up on the rest of the news. Here's Michelle.
Thanks, John. Good morning. The risk of getting cancer can be cut by 40% by taking more exercise and eating a healthier diet, according to a major new study. Julian Drucker reports.
The report by the World Cancer Research Fund, to be revealed later, is the most comprehensive survey to date on the links between cancer and diet and exercise. Over several years, thousands of men and women were monitored, and many of the findings are stark. Most crucially, the risk of getting some cancers, including colon and breast cancer, can be cut by up to 40%. That's with regular exercise and a diet rich in fruit and vegetables. It's thought the report may also suggest vitamin D, long credited with warding off cancer, has few benefits and does very little to cut the risk. Specialists say many people are still not aware that small lifestyle changes can help beat the disease. It warns that as a country, to tackle cancer properly, obesity must be cut dramatically.
Prince Harry has been questioned by police over the shooting of 2 protected birds of prey. The hen harriers are reported to have been killed on the edge of the royal family's Sandringham estate. The Prince and a friend were in the area at the time, but a spokesman said they were unaware of the incident. Robert Murat, the British man named as the official suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, is to be re-interviewed by police. The 33-year-old was given Arguido status 5 months ago. Madeleine's parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, are also official suspects. Many family doctors believe out-of-hours care is getting worse and patients are losing confidence in the system. A survey of GPs found 2/3 thought standards had fallen since Primary Care Trust took control 3 years ago. Richard Gaisford in a doctor's surgery in West London. Morning, Richard. So tell us what's gone wrong then.
Well, since 2004, when Primary Care Trusts took over and 90% of doctors opted out of their out-of-care services, it's been a bit of a funny situation. It's normally patients waiting for the doctors to tell us what's going wrong, but it's been the other way around. We as patients know that things haven't worked, and now it appears doctors too understand that. 60% of those polled for Pulse magazine say that they think that service has got worse since those changes were brought in. Well, Dr. Sarah Jarvis, you're amongst them, aren't you? It's all very well admitting there's a problem, but what is it that we can do to make this situation better?
The first thing we have to do is work out what the problem is. The problem doesn't seem to be among the doctors, because the same doctors who provide out of hours are the ones who are doing work in surgery. And we know that complaints against doctors have gone up threefold. They've trebled against doctors out of hours at the same time as they've stayed completely the same among doctors in surgery.
So it's the system in a way that's at fault here?
It very much does seem to be the system. Now, I think there's been a big issue. Primary care trusts have had an enormous amount of problem bringing in a major change to the system in a very short space of time. It probably should have been piloted for a little bit longer, but these things happen. I think now we have to work out how we can make that system work better for our patients.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. So changes need to be made, just need to work out what those changes are.
Richard, thanks for that. Britney Spears has been given permission to visit her 2 young sons 3 times a week, but a court also ruled she'll have to undergo random weekly drug and alcohol tests. Russell Watson is expected to leave hospital today after making good progress following an operation to remove a brain tumour. His manager says he'll need to rest for the foreseeable future. Now, on our website this morning, why so many of us are still paying off last year's Christmas debts. EastEnders Albert Square has been voted a dream place to live in. And how haunted is your house? Take ghost hunter Derek Okora's online test. All that and more on GM.TV. The time is 8 minutes past 6. Now it's back to Penny and John.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Let's have a quick look at the newspapers today. That's on the front page of The Guardian. Rising fear of energy crisis this winter. Electricity shortages and gas supply problems predicted to push bills up. That's a picture, by the way, of a Harrier hawk. Just because there are quite a lot of them about. Well, a few of them about. The Times, £100,000 tax relief as Brown gives way. Budget retreat after fury over capital gains. And that picture there, Banksy, the graffiti artist, he's back and he's at work in East London. The Independent, the face of a doomed species, saying that experts say a miracle is needed to save them. And the Daily Telegraph, make it easier to get an abortion, say MPs.
Tabloids concentrate on 2 stories. The Sun leading with the, well, let's call it confusion over the number of migrant workers there are in Great Britain. Sun, as ever, unequivocal. Migrants, Labour haven't a clue, is their headline. Daily Mail equally unkind, I suppose. The migrant job fiasco. We'll be talking to Caroline Flint, Minister responsible, at about 20 to 7 on this programme. Daily Express pleased to turn heat on Murat. He was, of course, the first suspect in the Madeleine McCann case, now going to be re-interviewed by the man now appointed to head that inquiry. Same story on the front page of the Daily Mirror.
Today, the father of a boy murdered by an IRA bomb will meet Gerry Adams, the president of Sinn Féin, which is the political wing of the IRA. Colin Parry's son Tim was 12 when he was killed by an IRA bomb in Warrington in 1993. Talking to Colin in just a moment, but first, Elaine Wilcox reports.
It was a warm Saturday afternoon, the day before Mother's Day, and this street was packed with shoppers. The 2 bombs had been placed in litter bins, designed to cause chaos and carnage. They exploded within a minute of each other. They claimed the lives of 2 innocent boys. 3-year-old Jonathan Ball died instantly. Tim Parry, who was 12, took the full force of the blast and died 5 days later. It was a crime which outraged the nation, marking a turning point in the IRA's bombing campaign, shifting the violence to mainland Britain. But it also marked the start of a remarkable personal journey by Tim's parents. Instead of being consumed by hate, they've worked tirelessly to achieve peace in Ireland. On the 7th anniversary of the atrocity, the Jonathan Ball and Tim Parry Young People's Centre was opened, bringing together children from different beliefs and cultures. They want peace to be the two boys' lasting legacies, so that their deaths weren't in vain.
And as you saw, Colin Parry is with us now. Good morning. Now, as we saw from that, you've already met one member of the former member of the IRA, Martin McGuinness. Today you're meeting Gerry Adams. Why?
Well, if you remember back in '93, the Troubles had already been going on for about 25 years, and in the 13, 14 years since 1993, if you add it all together, throughout the whole of that time, for me, Gerry Adams epitomised the face of Sinn Féin and the IRA. I mean, he was always the spokesman, along with Martin McGuinness, for the organisation. Whether he was or was not an active IRA member, I don't know. But I think I've reached a point in my journey, if that's not a silly word, and certainly the charity I run has, where people like Gerry Adams and I should meet.
The charity you're talking about, Foundation for Peace. How much do you think that's helped in the peace process?
Hard for me to say. What I can say is that we've worked with thousands of young Irish people and British people, and we've built an awful lot of friendships and a great many links with communities north and south of the border, and I think we'd all recognise that if you're ever to make any progress in reconciliation, you have to meet people.
What are you going to say to him?
Well, curiously, I'm going to thank him, actually, for having the guts to meet me, because that can't be easy for him, just like it's not easy for me to meet him. And, you know, for him to come to Canary Wharf, where the event is, which the IRA did considerable damage to all those years ago, and to be with a predominantly British audience, talking with and maybe against me, can't be easy. So, first of all, I'll thank him. But, I mean, I would ask him whether he could ever explain to me why Warrington was chosen, because it was never a town that had any military or strategic significance, so it never did have an easy explanation.
How often do you think of that day when your lives would change forever?
About the day itself, not too often. If I'm in Warrington town centre where the actual explosion took place, then there is a very significant sculpture which commemorates it, so it's very hard for me not to be very aware of it then. But as a routine thing, I'm not constantly thinking about that day. I think if I did, I wouldn't be very much use to anybody.
And what about the future for Northern Ireland?
Well, touch wood, it's looking good. I mean, I was as impressed as probably you were when we saw Gerry Adams and Ian Paisley sitting together and actually smiling. I mean, who would have ever imagined that? So the very fact that they're now sharing government is a hell of a step, and I think the future looks bright for Northern Ireland.
And I should imagine a lot of it to do with you and your wife and all the things that you've done since Tim and Jonathan were killed. Thank you very much, Colin Parry, for coming in this morning.
Time now 30 minutes past 6. A senior judge has allowed a convicted sex attacker from Sierra Leone to stay here in Britain despite the high possibility he may attack again. Mr Justice Hodge, husband of Labour Minister Margaret Hodge, ruled that the man should not be deported as it would be a breach of his human rights. Well, this morning, one of the offender's former victims has chosen to give up her anonymity to speak out against the ruling. Gabrielle Brown joins me now. Thank you very much indeed for being here. I assume that you have given up your right to anonymity because you're angry.
I'm very angry, yes. Justice Hodge deemed that he should remain in the United Kingdom because he came here at such a young age. He was deemed to be one of us and a so-called integrated alien. Having said that, a few years previously, prior to any of his convictions for sex offences, when his family applied for citizenship, they were all granted citizenship, but he wasn't, on the basis of his offending behaviour at that point.
So the society has known about this man's behaviour for some time and has decreed, or seems to have decreed, that he's not a fit and proper person to be here.
Absolutely.
Effectively. Now, we should just let people know exactly a little bit more about the background of this man. As I indicated in the introduction, this is not the first time that he's offended.
Indeed not. 6 months prior to him attacking me, he committed 6 sexual offences against women in the park.
And there was an accepted view that he was likely to offend again?
Yes.
That was not in any doubt?
No.
Right. But having, and bearing in mind, let me say right away, one fully appreciates the horror you've been through. You're the victim of a vicious, nasty and completely unsolicited attack. Bearing all that in mind, do you understand the judge who says, this guy has no family in Sierra Leone, he has no roots there, we can't just dump people, however undesirable they are, in foreign countries?
The same judgment talks about his emotional relationship with his family in the United Kingdom, and it's deemed, it actually says he has a very poor relationship with every member of his family in the United Kingdom. So there is no reason why he would be on a better footing in the United Kingdom as opposed to his home country of Sierra Leone.
Let's just consider what the Home Office have to say. They gave us a statement in which they said, we are disappointed that the courts reached this decision. We are deporting record numbers of foreign national prisoners and we expect to meet our target to deport a record 4,000 for this calendar year. New legislation will mean that foreign national prisoners will face automatic consideration of deportation where they have committed a serious crime. Does that comfort you at all?
Not at all. The decision was taken originally to deport him under Article 8.2 of the Human Rights Act, which provides exemptions for the right to private and family life on the grounds of, except for the prevention of crime and disorder, health and morals, and the rights and freedom of others. And I would actually say that it's the right and freedoms of others, of normal people going about their normal business, that should be protected over and above the rights of a prolific offender.
So in your view, the human rights legislation needs to be amended?
It needs to be interpreted differently by those that are those that have the power to do so.
And you're talking, of course, in this context about this particular judge.
I am indeed.
Do you have any appeal now? Is there any way you can go to get this, try and get this decision changed?
The only way is if the Home Office reinstigates the deportation process.
Which will be a long, costly business. Thank you very much indeed for coming to talk to us. I know it can't have been easy. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Time is 17 minutes past 6. You're watching the News Hour on GMTV. This morning's headlines: Britain's biggest supermarkets are expected to be criticised by the Competition Commission after an 18-month investigation. A major new study claims the risk of getting cancer can be cut by 40% by eating a healthier diet and taking more exercise. And Prince Harry's being questioned by police over the shooting of 2 protected birds of prey. He's denied any knowledge of the incident. Now, the visiting Saudi monarch, King Abdullah, is expected to be challenged by the Tory leader David Cameron today over extremist literature found in British mosques. That's according to today's Times newspaper. An investigation found Saudi-produced material in mosques across Britain preaching hatred for non-Muslims and the suppression of women. Meanwhile, in a speech today, the community's Secretary Hazel Blears will warn young Muslims against extremist propaganda and attempts to radicalise them. We're joined now by Halima Hussain from the Muslim Public Affairs Committee. Good morning. Many people will wonder why it's taken a visit by King Abdullah to actually have this issue brought up.
I mean, I can understand that, it's taken... This is an issue that a lot of young Muslims, a lot of people, are concerned about. I mean, really, I think it comes down to, if we're looking at mosques today, looking at the leadership of mosques, and looking at who runs the British mosques today and whose voice is being spoken and who's really being represented.
And why don't the mosques ban this literature?
I think it's a case of, I think one issue is complacency, the idea that, mosque leaders are out of touch, there's not much money around, and so literature, it's cheap, it's freely available, and it often finds its way into British mosques.
So you're saying that they don't necessarily know what's in them?
Yeah, I mean, often it's just a case of it's not even been checked, literature's not even been looked at. It's just
they just put it into the library and that's
often
it.
It's one of those things. But again, it's an issue of this kind of exported Islamic kind of ideology from Saudi Arabia being, exported into Britain, into British mosques. And you almost can see the correlation between what's going on in Saudi Arabia, this totalitarian oppressive regime. When you look at British mosques today, women aren't represented, young people aren't represented, and it's almost as if, we're seeing this kind of mimicking going on because they're looking to Saudi Arabia for their kind of their leadership.
I suppose the big question is how widespread are the views that are in this literature within the Muslim community here? I mean, for example, we're talking about the killing of gays, Jews spreading vice, seeing unbelievers as second-class citizens, for example.
I think, if you look, the average Muslim is a law-abiding citizen who gets on with his job, who is kind to his neighbours, who gets on with his daily life. And it's an issue of, these things being, this literature is available. I mean, it's available everywhere. It's available in the West. It's available, in Britain today. But I mean, I think simply because literature might be found doesn't necessarily mean that those views are being held by, every Muslim on the street. I mean, that's certainly not the case.
The Community Secretary, Hazel Blears, she wants young Muslims and in particular Muslim women to stand up against extremism. What do you think's needed? I know we haven't got a huge amount of time, but what do you think would really help?
I just think in terms of mosque leadership, in terms of women, Muslim women should empower themselves to engage in local mosques, to engage in local Muslim institutions, and just have their voices heard.
Halima Hussein, thank you very much.
Time now, 21 minutes past 6. A question for you. Do the big supermarkets have too much power, ripping off their suppliers and buying up land to stop other shops competing with them? Well, an 18-month inquiry into these issues by the Competition Commission reports back today and is expected to call for big changes. Cordelia Kreshmar has this.
They call them Tesco towns, towns where 50 pence in every pound spent on food is spent in Tesco. Towns like Stalham in Norfolk, where Tesco's got a virtual stranglehold on the local purse. Why do you choose Tesco's?
Well, it's the only one around this area, isn't it? So that's the only place we can go.
But with the price of food down 7% since the year 2000, why should we care about what they're calling a Tescopoly? Well, just this week, one of Norfolk's last independent petrol stations closed its pumps after 50 years and switched to selling cars. Then there's the issue of land ownership. Some time ago, Tesco bought this plot of land just over the road from their store, but they've done nothing with it yet. That means none of its rivals have been able to set up shop here. Good for Tesco's, but is it good for Stalham?
Everywhere you go is Tesco's, and also I don't think it's fair on little shops like in the high street here. A lot of them are shut down.
And then there's the issue of supply. This fishmonger's just lost the trout supplier they've used for the last 25 years, so they're all out of trout.
Tesco's are taking the monopoly on their catch, so we're unable to now get any sea trout from them.
Upsetting.
So that's put us in quite a muddle, yes.
Tesco claims that every little helps. But some people in this part of Norfolk say you can have too much of a good thing.
Well, Tesco said they wouldn't comment before the report comes out later this morning, but their boss, Sir Terry Leahy, says in the Sun newspaper this morning that any changes would penalise a British success story. Well, Stephen Allen-Britis joins us now. He's from the Federation of Small Businesses. Some would say, Tesco's and Sir Terry have got it right here. The best regulator in the business is the customer. The customer decides where they want to shop, and most people, or certainly lots of people, want to go to a big supermarket where they can park their car and do the whole shop in one fell swoop.
Yes, we don't deny that Tesco and the other supermarkets are clean, are safe, are cheap. You can buy all your goods in one fell swoop, £400, £500 worth. But we need to consider as we grow older and we haven't got that ability, we want to go round to the corner shop and it's not there. So we need to look at the long term as well. But why is Tesco also able to sell us a pound of sugar and a pint of milk so cheaply? It's because of the way in which they virtually bully and harass the suppliers.
They're selling below cost in some cases.
They're selling below cost, which is illegal in France, and that's why in France you've got the supermarkets working quite well with the boulangerie and the patisserie, and we'd like to see some of that kind of legislation over here.
We know they make a fortune. What is it? I got it. Horrendous profit, amazing profit. But, they're not running a charity at the end of the day. And small shopkeepers who diversify do well. Delis are doing well. There's a resurgence of delis. So, they're not eliminating all opposition, are they?
No, they're not. But at the current latest count, 2,000 small shops a year are closing down simply because this fierce competition. Also, as your programme showed, they're holding on to land to ensure no one else goes there. And the way in which they buy the goods from the farmer so cheaply themselves. They don't actually tell us that, and a lot of the consumer, a lot of the public out there believe that it's Tesco's through their own kind heart that are giving us these goods so cheaply. So we need to think about the supplier as well.
This report out today would indicate, or there are indications that this report out today is going to change some of the legislation regarding the purchase of land, etc., which is good news from your point of view. On the other hand, the bad news is that I think they call it the needs test, which applies at the moment, where a chain has to demonstrate that the local community needs a big supermarket. That's going to go away to open it up to competition from all sorts of people. We could finish up with more supermarkets as a result of this report, couldn't we?
We might get more smaller supermarkets or other supermarkets in competition to the big four, which would be no bad thing. But also, today's report will introduce an ombudsman to control the relationship between the supermarkets and the suppliers. I think we've moved on in terms of this big debate about whether Tesco are bad or not. We know that they're bad with their suppliers, so we need to think of those dairy farmers, those producers, to make sure they get a fair crack of the whip when they're selling their goods to the likes of Tesco.
OK, Steve, we should point out that this report isn't just about Tesco, it's about all four of the big supermarkets, and we did invite all four of them involved in this investigation onto the programme. Tesco's, Sainsbury's, Asda and Morrison's all declined and refused to comment ahead of the report, which is being published about 35 minutes' time at 7 o'clock this morning. Thank you, Stephen. Good to see you.
Thank you.
6:26, just a few hours now before Andrea follows me and turns into a pumpkin. Andrea.
Been doing that for years, Penny. Always follow whatever you do. I'm here in West Sussex this morning. I'm just outside Crawley. It's a place called Tully's Farm. Basically, we're here because of Halloween. It's been growing in popularity over the past few years or so. Obviously, it's much bigger in America, but even here, they're kind of starting to get into it. In Tully's Farm, they sort of throw themselves into it rather enthusiastically. We've asked for some people to come. Oh my God! Let's take a look at the weather. Oh my God!
GMTV weather, sponsored by Nestle Cereals. Whole grain for the whole family every morning.
They always have very wild parties here in West Sussex, either that or lack of makeup department. OK, weather-wise, I don't know if you can see just behind me, very clear skies here in the southeast this morning, but very, very chilly indeed. Temperatures have dropped down to around freezing, just around 1 degree in the Bournemouth region this morning. What that means is we are seeing a little bit of mist and fog to start off with. That should lift very readily, and I think most parts of England and Wales will see a fine, dry and bright start. Basically, the weather today is very similar to the kind of conditions that we saw yesterday. For the west that you are, that's always we're going to see a little bit more in the way of clouds and patchy drizzle. Especially for the north and west, and also northern western Scotland. For this afternoon, not really that much in the way of change. Dry, fine and bright for most eastern counties, always more unsettled in the north and west. Temperature-wise for today, well, again, fairly chilly, as you'd expect for Halloween, for the end of October, but not doing too bad. You've got the winds coming up from the Azores at the moment. What that means is the temperatures will be fairly mild for tonight. Of course, it's Halloween. You're going to be out trick-or-treating. Sunset times, as you can see across the country, varying anywhere between around 4:30-ish, the further south that you are, to around 10 to 5 o'clock, the further north that you are. So what's the weather going to be like for trick-or-treaters? Well, starting off in the north, you can see, well, fairly drizzly, it has to be said. You may well need to take a brolly if you're out and about trick-or-treating. The temperatures should hold their own, only dropping to around 12 degrees or so. Further south, well, we will see clearer skies, which means that you might not get quite so wet, but of course it will be a touch chillier. But even saying that, as I say, we've got the winds coming from a rather friendly direction, so it won't be too cold if you're heading out, and clearer skies. Chance of some drizzle in Cornwall later on. For tomorrow, well, in terms of tomorrow's weather, it's sort of more of the same, really. Most of eastern counties, that includes parts of Scotland, right the way down into the southeast of England, waking up with some clear skies, but rather drizzly and unpleasant the further west that you are. I cannot, honestly, wherever I go, I just pull. I love being me. Here's your summary.
For your local 5-day weather update, visit our website, gm.tv. There are days when it does feel a bit like that here, doesn't it?
Yes. Ours just don't have masks, do they?
Time is almost 6:30. It's Wednesday. Of course, it is October the 31st. It is Halloween.
Yes, you're watching the news hour on GMTV, and in the next half hour, 800,000, 1.1 million, or 1.5 million. Just how many jobs have gone to migrants, and can we ever trust the government over immigration again? We'll ask them in a few minutes' time.
Out-of-hours care. Even doctors admit that patients are suffering since they stopped working in the evenings and weekends.
And over-pampering your pets. Why obesity is a weighty problem for our four-legged friends. I know I've got to. Now then, our top story this morning. Britain's biggest supermarkets are expected to be criticised by the Competition Commission this morning for using the planning laws to dominate local markets. It's also expected to call for an independent ombudsman to monitor the way they deal with suppliers. Cordelia Kreshmar is in Norfolk for us this morning. So tell us more about what you think this report is going to say, Cordelia.
Good morning, John. Well, we think it's going to say that nationally the picture's pretty healthy. After all, the price of food has gone down 7% since the year 2000. But there are problems locally. A growing number of towns, for example, have actually become dominated by just one of the big-name supermarkets in recent years. And to stop that happening, they want to look at, or they want to propose a kind of a shake-up of planning laws to make it easier for competitor supermarkets to move into a town. Well, I'm here in an independent grocer here in Stalham, a town dominated, as it happens, by Tesco's, and the owner is Nigel Dowdney. Nigel, does this put to bed your fears about competition in Stalham, the prospect of a Sainsbury's or an Asda opening up down the road more easily?
No, I'm very concerned about it. There have been two supermarkets a week opening since 2001 in this country. To me, that indicates that the planning laws are already fairly liberal and we don't need to open them up any further.
OK, thanks a lot. Well, this is clearly going to be a controversial recommendation as and when it's made. Problems for people like Nigel owning independent shops. But the Competition Commission have the price of food, choice and issues of low prices at heart for the consumer. And that, they say, is best served by what they're recommending.
Cordelia, thanks very much indeed. That report out at 7 o'clock.
Let's get this morning's other news stories now from Michelle.
Thanks, Penny. Good morning. The risk of getting cancer can be cut by 40% by taking more exercise and eating a healthier diet, according to a major new study. Julian Drucker reports.
The report by the World Cancer Research Fund, to be revealed later, is the most comprehensive survey to date on the links between cancer and diet and exercise. Over several years, thousands of men and women were monitored, and many of the findings are stark. Most crucially, the risk of getting some cancers, including colon and breast cancer, can be cut by up to 40%. That's with regular exercise and a diet rich in fruit and vegetables. It's thought the report may also suggest vitamin D, long credited with warding off cancer, has few benefits and does very little to cut the risk. Specialists say many people are still not aware that small lifestyle changes can help beat the disease. It warns that as a country, to tackle cancer properly, obesity must be cut dramatically.
Prince Harry has been questioned by police over the shooting of two protected birds of prey. The hen harriers are reported to have been killed on the edge of the royal family's Sandringham estate. The prince and a friend were in the area at the time, but a spokesman said they were unaware of the incident. A pledge to end the culture of failing schools will be made today by the Prime Minister. It's Gordon Brown's first major speech on education since taking over at number 10. Gloria Di Piero is at Westminster. So, Gloria, is he admitting Labour should have done a better job on education?
Michelle, he'll say that lots of progress has been made, but lots more needs to be done. And he'll say that he wants to see all schools getting 30% at least of their pupils getting 5 good GCSEs, including maths and English. And those schools that haven't achieved that within 5 years' time, he believes should be closed down. He'll also call on parents to get more involved in a child's education, saying that the biggest single factor to how well a child is at school is how much of an interest mums and dads take in their education. So he will call on schools to do more to encourage mums and dads to get involved. Now, he'll be talking to us about more details of those proposals just after 7, and we'll be asking, yes, despite the improvements, why still, after 10 years of a Labour government, 54% of school leavers still leave school without getting a good GCSE grade, A to C in English and maths.
Gloria, thanks for that. Many family doctors believe out-of-hours care is getting worse and patients are losing confidence in the system. A report of GPs found 2/3 thought standards had fallen since primary care trusts took control 3 years ago. Robert Murat, the British man named as an official suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, is to be re-interviewed by police. Madeleine's parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, are also official suspects. MRSA hotspots such as door handles and lockers are being missed by hospital cleaners, according to a leading microbiologist. Dr. Stephanie Dancer says too much time is spent blitzing areas like floors rather than cleaning objects like the ones that people touch. Security forces are on high alert in Spain ahead of the verdict today in the Madrid train bombings trial. 191 people died and 1,500 were injured after the bomb attacks on 4 commuter trains. 28 people face charges, including murder and conspiracy to commit a terrorist attack. Russell Watson is expected to leave hospital today after making good progress following an operation to remove a brain tumour. His manager says he'll need rest for this foreseeable future. Britney Spears has been given permission to visit her 2 young sons 3 times a week, but a court also ruled she'll have to undergo random weekly drug and alcohol tests. Now, on our website this morning, why so many of us are still paying off last year's Christmas debts. EastEnders Albert Square has been voted a dream place to live in. And how haunted is your house? Take ghost hunter Derek Akora's online test. All that and more on GM.TV. Now, there was glitz, glamour and lots of stiff hair in London's West End last night to mark the opening of one of Broadway's most popular shows, Hairspray. Many celebrities turned up completely lacquered.
I have used a whole tin of hairspray today on my hair.
There's not much hair here, so one has to use a little bit of hairspray just to keep it up.
I don't use any hairspray. That's just as it is.
The time is 6:36. John and Penny back in just a couple of minutes, right after what's happening where you are.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning. Here are the main stories in the Northwest. The father of a 12-year-old killed by an IRA bomb in Warrington will meet Sinn Féin leader Gerry Adams for the first time today. Colin Parry's son Tim was killed in 1993. Mr Parry and Mr Adams will share a platform this evening to mark the progress of the peace process in Northern Ireland. Mr Parry says he's not expecting any apologies.
So, I mean, when I met McGuinness some years ago, he voluntarily offered his apologies and said it shouldn't have happened. But frankly, those apologies were meaningless. And if Gerry Adams were to say the same thing to me, I would be unable to feel any differently about what happened because of that.
A 15-year-old boy has died after being involved in an accident with a bus in Liverpool. It happened on Mather Avenue in the Walton area just after 7:30 last night. Police were in the area at the time and the matter has been voluntarily referred to the Independent Police Complaints Commission. A football club mourning the death of one of their young star players has become the victims of theft after paying their respects to their teammates' family. 11-year-old Liam Costello from Liverpool died after falling 200 feet on Snowdon last Friday. The Walton FC coaching staff had parked in a pub car park while visiting his parents. When they returned, they discovered 2 kits belonging to their under-7 sides had been stolen.
Them kits are for, Saturday, Sunday to play Sunday football, and it was for them. And when we've just come from paying our tributes to Liam and his wife and things like that, and to walk back to your car, and as I said, other things have gone, but as I said, I'm not interested in other things. It's just them 2 kits, and we really need them back, to tell you the truth.
Opera singer Russell Watson is expected to be released from hospital later this morning after undergoing emergency surgery last week. The Salford-born tenor underwent 3 hours of treatment to remove a brain tumour at the Alexandra Hospital in Cheadle. The singer fell ill while recording his new album. It's the second time he's undergone brain surgery. Finally, on tonight's Granada Reports, we want your Halloween pictures. The details on how to send them in by email or text are just on the screen there, and we'll show the best at the end of tonight's show. So do send them to us as soon as possible. That's it for now. I'm back at 7:05. In a moment, we'll return to John and Penny, but first, the weather.
Rewind the seasons with the Time Renewal Collection from Pantene, sponsors of GMTV Weather.
A few bright sunny intervals are expected, but coastal areas will remain cloudy with light drizzle in places. This afternoon, there will be little change throughout the afternoon, with any sunshine limited to areas inland. Mild temperatures of 15 Celsius.
It's almost 20 to 7 and we're going to have a quick look at the papers, and first, an R story.
Very R.
This is Bill and Jessie, and they've been together for 78 years. And look, that's them when they were 2, holding hands, and they're still holding hands so many years later. There we go, next door neighbours in Margate. It does, warms the cockles.
Congratulations to the two of you.
The Guardian, rising fear of energy crisis this winter, and the picture of one of these Harriers that Prince Harry is being quizzed over possibly shooting. The Independent, the face of a doomed species, saying experts say miracles needed to save the Indian tiger. The Daily Express and the Mirror both going on that story. The Madeleine McCann story, police to turn heat on Murat. His story doesn't add up, and the same on the front page of the Mirror.
Two of the tabloids are concentrating on the, let's say, call it confusion over the number of migrant workers here in the UK. The migrant jobs fiasco is a headline in the Mail. The Sun, less generous. Migrants, Labour haven't a clue. Well, they are the government that pledged British jobs for British workers, but that's been seriously undermined with the news that more than half of the new jobs created since 1997 have gone to foreign workers. Earlier this week, the Work and Pensions Secretary, Peter Hain, said 2.7 million jobs have been created under Labour, and of them, only 800,000 had gone to migrants. But then Mr Hain revised the figure to 1.1 million. Then, a figure from the government's own Office of National Statistics, but it even higher at 1.5 million. Well, joined now by the Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, Chris Grayling, and the Employment Minister, Caroline Flint. Good to see you both. Thanks for getting up to talk to us. Caroline, a usually embarrassing episode for the government, and something that looks like a cover-up that went wrong, was it?
Certainly wasn't a cover-up. The original figure of 800,000, which is foreign nationals who've come into new jobs since 1997, was, we found, to be incorrect. And as soon as we discovered that, we wanted to have a look at the statistics, make sure we got it right. And that's why we came to the 1.1 million, which we were very upfront about. I have to say, what is confusing about this is when you get figures that aren't representative. So the 1.5 million does include foreign nationals, but it also includes people who were born abroad but actually are UK nationals. And I think, you know, it's really important in this debate, because I know it raises issues for people, but it's very important that when we're using statistics, we're talking about the same people, and 1.5 million
it's just
isn't
unfortunate
the same
you
about
didn't
the
get them right.
Well, no, we did.
So it's a good old-fashioned cock-up, nothing more.
Well, yes, it's a statistical mistake, but the reason it matters is that the wave of people who've come into the country in the last few years to work here are creating big problems in the area of housing, for public services, for local authorities who are trying to plan what they do locally. They get money based on the number of people who are supposed to be in their areas. If ministers don't really know how many people are here, and there are still even doubts about the figures we know now, they don't include, for example, people in temporary accommodation, people who've only recently arrived in the UK, and Labour's own Frank Field is now saying the figure could be as high as 1.6 million.
He said these are based on 2003, they're out of date. Let's just say the figures for a minute. Let's just put the point he made by the Sun front page this morning, Claire. The fact of the matter is, you haven't the faintest idea how many migrant workers there are in this country, because there's probably hundreds now in Peterborough, Slough, Oldham, Barnsley, all over the place. You haven't a clue who are here.
Well, we do have the statistics which help us make those estimates, and I have to say they're the same basis that of statistics we used under previous Conservative governments as well. We are also introducing ID cards for foreign nationals from next year's. We are going to be counting people in and counting that, and including for those who come on the workers' permits, setting a limit.
As of now, I'm sorry, talking about that. As of now, you must admit, you don't know how many migrant workers there are in this country. You could not reliably, honestly, put your hand on your heart and tell me.
What we do know, John, is that 29.1 million people are in work in this country. We're not dealing with the mass unemployment of the 80s and 90s, where over 3 million were unemployed. We do know that there are less people on benefits, and those figures are coming down. And for the first time in 20 years, the figures for people on capacity benefit are coming down. And yes, migrant workers have come into this country. I met a Polish worker downstairs who's working on your reception, who is with a partner who is British, and they are contributing to our workforce alongside British people who are in record numbers of jobs.
And despite the problems you outline, which I think are accepted by government, they are causing strains in certain areas. You have to accept, Chris, that overall these migrant workers are good news for the British economy. There's no doubt about that.
We have never suggested anything but that migrant workers, that people coming into the UK have made a positive contribution.
But it doesn't sound like it, Chris, in the way you misrepresent some of the figures, and you aren't, when you use the figures, you're not talking about the same people. And I think
Caroline,
that is
I'm
dangerous.
not misrepresenting anything. We've had queues of ministers lining up this week to apologise for the fact that they've put the wrong figures before us. But the hard reality is we have higher youth unemployment in this country than we did 10 years ago. We have 1.2 million people between 16 and 24 who are not of work.
the cause of that?
We need to focus on getting those young people back into work. And you know, if we did that, we would not need to have such an influx of migrant workers into the UK.
One other point, and this is another...
It's a very dangerous issue when you start mixing up different issues around unemployment and you connect migrant workers to issues about young people. The number of young people who are long-term unemployed has gone down dramatically. Yes, we need to do more about those 16 and 17-year-olds who are coming out of school without qualifications, and that's something we're addressing. But don't mix up these issues because
Let's
it's
just
very
come back to the
dangerous.
issue we're discussing this morning, or the headline issue we're discussing this morning. And another problem, I suggest you've created for yourselves. British jobs for British workers, apart from the fact that it is clearly a nonsense. It's illegal. You can't do that. You can't discriminate in that way under EU law.
Well,
so it's nonsense for Gordon Brown to say we're creating British jobs for British workers. You can't do it.
Well, there's 660,000 vacancies out there in the UK today. We have signed up over the summer over 100 employers who've signed local employment partnerships with us. And what they're going to do, John, is work with our job centres to support people who are currently on benefits into work. That is what we mean by providing the opportunity to work for British people. And that's one of the ways we can fill the vacancies
Just
and
very,
still
very
have
briefly, in fairness,
migrant
do you
workers
accept that?
playing a contribution.
I accept the government are doing things, and I'd be horrified if they weren't. But they've been in power for 10 years. These are problems that are
And
here
we don't
today.
have 3 million people unemployed as we did under the Tories.
We have 5 million people who are stranded on benefits.
No, they are people with disabilities, they are students, so again you're mixing up the information, I'm afraid, Chris, which doesn't help in the terms of your leader having a sensible debate.
There we've got to leave. I regret to say. It's a fascinating debate. Love to know what people at home think about it all. Thank you both very much, Steve, for coming to talk to us this morning. Thank you, Chris.
Time is 7:15. Doctors will admit today that since being able to opt out of working evenings and weekends, standards of out-of-hours patient care have deteriorated. A new poll in Pulse magazine finds that 60% of GPs think care's got worse, and half say they often have patients complain about the service. Well, Richard Gaisford's in a doctor's surgery in Hammersmith for us this morning. Richard.
Yes, good morning, Penny. Well, it was back in 2004 that things changed in a health service, and for doctor surgeries like this, primary care trusts took over and GPs got new contracts, and it was all supposed to be good news for everyone, and for the GPs it certainly was. Many of them got pay rises because they had to offer more services. It meant that there were more GPs available for patients, and in general terms, most of us got a better deal during the day and during the working week because there were more doctors to see. More stayed around in the service. They were leaving in large numbers before this new contract, and more have since been attracted to work as GPs. The big problem came, though, with the out-of-hours service. 90% of them decided to contract out of that. They didn't want to do those weekends and the overnight shifts, which were really draining on them and meant that they weren't actually getting huge amounts of money for it. So not surprisingly, they said, don't worry, we'll leave that to someone else. And from the patient's point of view, very quickly everyone saw what was going wrong. There was no continuity of care. You never knew really who was going to turn up, when they were going to turn up, and what they were going to say. And records and reports weren't necessarily passed on, and in some cases tragic circumstances. So that really is the scheme and the system that needs to be changed.
Thanks very much. Well, joining me now is Dr. David Colin Thorne, the National Director for Primary Care. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Do you accept that you've got this out-of-hours system wrong, letting GPs off the hook over working evenings and weekends? Now it's the patients who are suffering.
No, I don't accept that. I accept that there are areas where service hasn't been so good, but generally patients are very satisfied with the survey. And we did have an independent assessment done last year by the National Audit Office, which showed that the vast majority of patients were very happy with the service, some extremely happy. No evidence that any safety issues could be related to out-of-hours services. And it's, after all, it's what GPs request to do because of the stresses of being on call 24 hours a day. And I think, as a result, we've produced, and the Audit Commission, the National Audit Office confirms this, one of the best out-of-hours services in Europe.
So are you saying that doctors are lying then? Because just 1 in 10 doctors says that service has improved.
Sorry, no. Is this in this survey in Pulse, are you talking about?
Yes.
Yes. Well, that's just a very brief survey in a publication that tends to have very superficial, non-scientifically based studies. And I think that we need to have facts. If some GPs are saying there are particular problems in their area, then that's something we need to focus on. But I've been a GP, just retired after 36 years. Our out-of-hours service was fine. I've just been visiting a big out-of-hours combine in London, which serves 700 GPs. plenty of GPs are volunteering to do the work, and there's no issue about quality and safety or any other problems there.
So what are you actually saying then, that this is just rubbish then, that actually everything is hunky-dory apart from a few little things here and there?
No, I'm not saying everything's hunky-dory. One of the things you find in the health service is that generally you might have a good service, but in pockets there is a service which isn't very good, and that's what we need to focus on. What I am saying is that the out-of-hours service is not a failure, as often people assert. And it was GPs who wanted to opt out of their 24-hour responsibility, quite understandably. But remember that before GPs opted out, back in 2000, there were so many complaints about the service then, that's when the GP-led services, when they had cooperatives and so on, that the Ombudsman got involved and had a study done, and that's why we responded in the way that we've done. Not hunky-dory, not hunky-dory, but good in most parts and could be better in some, and that's what we need to be putting our attention to, rather than saying the whole service is nonsense.
Right, so rather than, so at the moment we're talking about patients, for example, having to have telephone triage, dealing with nurses rather than doctors, going to hard-pushed A&E. You're saying, as I said, can I just reiterate, you're saying it's just a few here and there, little pockets, as you put it.
It's pockets, and in fact there's no evidence that A&E attendance have gone up since the out-of-hours service happened, this new service. In fact, currently our figures are showing that A&E services have stabilised, and any rise in A&E happened before GPs began to leave the 24-hour responsibility. So I think there's a lot of assertions made which creates a sort of sense of panic. But where there's areas of poor performance, that's right, we need to do something about it. But the general service meets both patient satisfaction and independent assessment satisfaction.
We have to leave it there. Dr. David Colin Thorne, thank you very much for talking to us this morning, and obviously we'd like your comments at home. Don't forget you can email us gm.tv. John.
Now then, obesity, it seems, is not just a problem for human beings anymore. This is Storm. Storm is a massive 48 kilos. That's 7 stone, almost as much as Victoria Beckham. And next to me, there's Scooby. Now, she is an astonishing 80% overweight. Doesn't look it to me, but apparently she is. Possibly due to her love of fish and chips, chicken curry and ice cream. We'll be weighing her a little bit later if we can get her on the scale. So they're among the 8 finalists in this year's Pet Fit Club competition organised by the animal charity, the People's Dispensary for Sick Animals. And Paul Manklow from the PDSA is here to explain more. This is a huge problem, you're saying. I mean, I say this, I know it's a problem. I've got 2 very fat cats, right? But I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a survey at the PDSA, and a national survey, and we're finding that in some areas of England, pet obesity is rising to about 30%, and I'm sure that's mirroring what they're finding in child and human obesity rises, so it's definitely an important issue that we need to address. And
is it because big softies like me? I mean, at 4 o'clock this morning, one of my cats came and cried at my ankles, as though it hadn't been fed for about a week, and I give in. I feed it on demand.
Absolutely, and pets are very intelligent. That's a learned behaviour. So your cat's, you know, knows how to get treats and food out of you. So yeah, they're very clever, very clever. But also, it's a change in owners' lifestyles as well, and the different ways that we respond to our pets as well.
Yeah. So I mean, why is he so big, Steve? Come on, honest, hand on heart.
Hand on heart. He's overweight because I used to give him tidbits. I always used to cave in all the time.
Yeah, what sort of tidbits?
Leftovers from chips to chicken, anything like that.
Does he do what my cats do? Does he sit by your side when you're having dinner?
All the time,
yes?
and dribbles.
And dribbles it too. I might not do that. So, like, can we see if Scooby will go on the weight machine? Let's see what she... And you can tell me... You see, I don't think she looks that overweight, but I'm assured by the authorities that she is. Now, why do you think, Jenny, that she... What is she now? In...
Stay.
What's that say? 2 stone... 6 pounds, 2 stone, 6 pounds. Is that what you thought?
Yeah,
roughly.
We do it in kilos at the pet thing.
So you're a big softie too, are you?
Yes, too much.
Fish and chips, really?
Really.
Ice
Thai
cream.
curry,
Yeah.
ice cream.
I have a cat that eats cheese, actually.
Oh yes, she loves it.
Cheese as well?
She loves it. Anything that she can eat, she will try.
Right.
And if she likes it, she will eat it.
And they're all... You're going to have a competition now to find out who can lose the most weight. Now, can you actually safely make an animal lose weight? Because it sounds a bit iffy to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the competitions run over 100 days, so it's just over 3 months. And we're not going to get these pets back to their ideal weight, but we're going to get them on the road to that ideal weight.
And how do you do that? I mean, it's useful for me. How do you do that? What do I do?
It's about addressing the whole life lifestyle. It's not just about diet and nutrition. It's exercise, it's behaviour, it's training, it's everything.
Can't take the cat for a walk, though, can I?
Yeah, but it's spending more time with your pets, playing games. You can instigate your cat in a hunting game, things like that. So it's just getting them more active.
They bring mice in all the time.
You can play Monopoly with your cats, you know you can.
Mine are fantastic, I'll tell you. Really nice in the sight of a dead mouse on the kitchen floor at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'll tell you.
Lovely. Thank
there
you
we go.
very much.
All the very best.
Thank
yeah,
you.
lovely animals, well behaved. Thank you very much.
And that's it from the News Hour. Fiona and Andrew up next with GMTV Today.
Yes, we'll be talking to Heather Mills live on the programme on why she's taking on the newspapers over what she says are untrue stories about her.
And will the weather be a trick or a treat? Andrew's going to have the details. That's after the break.
The stage is set to celebrate 12 months in television. But behind the smiles and bravado lie friendly rivalries and a burning desire to be loved by you, the public. This is a night for the stars to come out and feel that love. Your votes are what count, and all that remains is for the winners to be revealed. The National Television Awards 2007, live tonight from 8:30, ITV1.
No one said game shows were easy.
Kieran! What's the question again? They're not as stupid as they look, are they?
But with Vernon on hand, nothing can go wrong.
I am going to play with my wife. Name a type of demon.
Lesbian!
Well, almost nothing.
I don't get that.
That's what he said.
The brain isn't as young as it was, you know.
That's what I deal with on a day-to-day basis.
All-Star Family Fortune, Saturday, 8:25 on ITV1.
She was Queen of the Jungle, a real diva, and now a mummy too. Hearsay is, she's live on GMTV. Mylene Class, Friday.
GMTV weather, sponsored by Nestle Cereals. Whole grain for the whole family, every morning.
Hello there. A little bit misty and foggy here in the southeast this morning. I'll just make my way through towards you. I actually have to tell you, that's not mist and fog. That's remnants of a terrible crash that's happened here in West Sussex. What it is it's one of the many exhibits that's sort of dotted around Tully's Farm. That's where we are. If you're wondering where it is, as I say, it's in Crawley in West Sussex. It's all geared up for Halloween, which is, of course, taking place tonight. There's lots of scary things for the kids to frighten themselves witless about, and we're going to be taking you around here throughout the morning. But let's have a look and see what sort of trick-or-treat weather we've got in store for this morning. Well, here in the southeast, clear skies away from any pretend fog. It's not looking too bad across eastern parts of the country. That includes eastern parts of Scotland as well. Generally speaking, it's very similar weather conditions to what we saw yesterday. So the further west that you are, that's where it's a touch more grey, a little bit of a patchy drizzle around. We've also got the odd mist and fog patch around, but that should clear once the sun gets to work. It should fizzle away quite quickly. For this afternoon, not really that much in the way of change. Any rain across the far north and west of Britain will turn rather more heavy and persistent, but it should stay fine, dry and bright elsewhere. I don't know if you can even see me now. Let's move around a little way that way. Temperature-wise, now, for tonight, of course, the sun goes down anytime between